Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Peace be upon you and welcome to the News in Brief. The U.S. forces killed several people for entering Iraq illegally from Syria and for firing at and bringing down an American helicopter. The U.S. ambassador to Israel says that the FBI will send a team to Gaza to investigate the attack, killing 3 Americans. Palestinian resistance factions deny responsibility for the roadside explosion, attacking a passing U.S. diplomatic convoy. The U.S. Department of State advises its citizens to leave Gaza. Powell demands that the Palestinian Prime Minister punish such actions. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority called for a joint American-Palestinian investigative committee to investigate the incident.
We are sorry about so much, sorry about what happened in today in Ares against with American diplomat. We condemn it strongly. We send all condolences to the families of those who's being killed there, and we hope for those who injured.
The United States vetoes a resolution denouncing Israel's building of the separation wall inside the West Bank. Russia says that it is not satisfied with the revised U.S. resolution on Iraq, requesting that the current draft not be put to a vote. Washington says that the vote will take place today. This is the end of the News in Brief. Peace be upon you and welcome to the news. During a telephone conversation, the U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell demanded that the Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Kuria capture what he called terrorists. The U.S. diplomatic convoy was attacked in Gaza, killing 3 people and wounding another. Palestinian President Yasser Arafat commented, saying that such actions benefit Ariel Sharon's government, who refuses the presence of international monitors. Meanwhile, most of the resistance movements denied responsibility for the attack.
This is the first incident of this kind to occur in the Gaza Strip, killing 3 officials from the U.S. Embassy and moderately wounding another. Their vehicle exploded while driving over a landmine implanted on the Salah ad-Din road near the village of Bet Hanun, north of the Gaza Strip. A U.S. security vehicle was ahead of the 3-car convoy, carrying American diplomats working at the U.S. Embassy. They were on their way to Gaza to meet with Palestinian academics to discuss their trip to the United States.
I came from up there at the end of the street. I saw 3 jeeps before the explosion happened. As soon as I got there, there were the 3 cars and the police car ahead of them. The first car passed by, but the car in the middle exploded. I ran over and saw the police car go down that way. We saw weapons, bags, and bodies scattered on the ground.
The Palestinian leadership condemned the attack, saying it's a crime, also calling for a joint team from the U.S. and the Quartet Committee to investigate the incident, pointing the finger at Israel since the attack occurred on a border area that has been numerously reoccupied by the Israeli forces.
We send our condolences to the victims' families and ask the American administration to seek the truth and accuracy. Also to launch an immediate investigation to find out what happened. Furthermore, we ask the American administration not to listen to any invitations from Israel to attack our people in response to this operation.
Meanwhile, Israel accused the Palestinian Authority and factions of being behind the attack. However, the Palestinian factions denied this claim, reiterating that they do not wish to expand the circle of violence to include the Americans. Observers don't believe that a specific group is behind this incident that only benefits Israel.
I can't say that one group or another were behind this, because this requires more information. However, I believe that ultimately this operation is in the interest of Israel. I don't believe that the Palestinian people, authority, or factions have decided to enter a war with the United States.
U.S. investigators accompanied by the Palestinian police arrived at the site for inspection and findings, but they quickly left when Palestinian youths began throwing rocks at them. There are overwhelming feelings of tension in the anticipation of the aftermath of the killing of Americans in the Gaza Strip due to an operation which no one has claimed responsibility for. Azam Badaro, Abu Dhabi Television, Beit Hanoun, Gaza.
President Arafat strongly condemned the crime which hit the U.S. observers' bodyguards who were carrying out their duties for the sake of security and peace. President Arafat asserted in a communique that he gave his orders for the formation of a joint inquiry committee with the United States and the Quartet International Committee to unveil the circumstances of this crime. President Arafat sent his condolences to the U.S. President George W. Bush and the families of the victims. Prime Minister Ahmed al-Quraysh conveyed during a telephone call with U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell the condolences of President Arafat, the Palestinian cabinet, the Palestinian Authority, and people to the U.S. President George W. Bush and families of the explosion victims that took place Wednesday morning near Beit Hanoun crossing. The Prime Minister voiced the PNA's condemnation to the tragic accident, voicing the PNA commitment to cooperate with any committee the United States will form to investigate the incident. Powell promised to inform the United States President of the Palestinian condolences, thanking Quraysh for his willing to cooperate with an American investigating committee, voicing hope that the National Authority will be able to form a stable government, adding by saying that he is looking forward to working with the Quraysh government, whom Powell considers able to move the political track. In a communique issued Wednesday, the Palestinian National Authority strongly denounced the explosion that occurred at Beit Lahia area, which is under the Israeli army military control, causing the death of 3 U.S. observers' bodyguards who were heading to their work. The communique also said that the scene area has been reoccupied for several months ago by the Israeli occupation troops, where they planted mines, so that the PNA called for forming a mutual investigatory committee as soon as hearing about the painful incident, for revealing the circumstances of this crime that aims at the withdrawal of the United States and the European observers, asserting that such immoral aim is what Israel is seeking, for sending warm condolences to the U.S. President and to the families of the innocent victims. The Palestinian National Authority denounced the U.S. veto against the decision condemning Israel, asserting that this veto is giving the Israeli government the green light to continue the construction of the separation wall as well as settlements. Dr. Saad Arafat said that such veto contradicts with the vision of the United States President George W. Bush for the establishment of 2 states living side by side and the roadmap for peace, asserting that the Israeli practices and the violation of the Geneva Fourth Convention deserves a U.S. condemnation, not an encouragement. Earlier, the U.S. administration on Tuesday vetoed at the Security Council against the decision condemning Israel for continuing the construction of the separation wall in the Palestinian territories occupied in 1967.
A car bomb outside the Turkish Embassy in Baghdad killed a bomber and a bystander and wounded some 13 other people. The attack comes a week after the Turkish government decision to send troops into occupied Iraq, a move strongly opposed by the Iraqi Governing Council, also by the Iraqi religious and political parties.
For the 3rd time in a week, the U.S. occupation received blow after they failed to prevent a bomber from striking the Turkish embassy in Baghdad. According to witnesses, 2 people were killed, including the bomber, and at least 13 others were injured. Last week, a car bomb explosion hit the Baghdad hotel, housing the U.S. intelligence and the Iraqi police headquarters. The site behind the bombings remains a mystery, but occupation forces said their intelligence informed them of an increased danger on the Turkish embassy. According to the U.S. military, they took security measures that were apparently superficial, allowing the bomber to carry out his mission. However, they called it successful.
About 3 days ago, we received indications that there might be an increased danger to the Turkish embassy. This was based both on walk-in informants and from the recent decision of the Turkish government to authorize the introduction of troops into Iraq. Based on this information, we ramped up the security measures here at this embassy. And these security measures succeeded in preventing any loss of life inside the embassy compound.
Angry Iraqis gathered at the scene, demanding U.S. forces to let Iraqis handle their own security.
We want Iraqis to handle security. Iraqis know best how this country is. American soldiers only came after the blast. It's always Iraqis who die. None of the Americans have died.
Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan commented Tuesday on the blast, saying he does not consider the attack on his country's embassy in Baghdad as a warning not to send soldiers into Iraq.
We do not accept that this is a warning against the permission we have obtained from the National Assembly with regards to sending troops to Iraq, because we believe that this is only an attitude against the positive developments which are taking place in Iraq. We believe terror cannot be a help towards peace or happiness, nor the welfare of the Iraqi population.
For his part, Turkey's Foreign Minister Abdullah Gül said from the organization of the Islamic Conference in Malaysia that his country would only send what he called peacekeeping forces to Iraq for no longer than 1 year. But Iraqi courts and members of the Iraqi Governing Council fear Turkish forces may interfere in Iraq's post-war development. Iraq's Governing Council held Tuesday a special meeting on ways to confront the growing wave of violence and met with the Minister of Interior to discuss the necessary security measures to provide security to Iraqi citizens. The Governing Council is opposed to a Turkish deployment, and so is prominent Iraqi Muslim Shiite cleric Sayyid Muqtada Sadr, an outspoken critic of the Council and the U.S. occupation.
There's no difference between the Turkish troops and other occupying troops. We as Iraqis refuse the presence of any troops, and there is no difference what country they come from. We shouldn't concentrate on the Turkish troops alone. We refuse the entry of Turkish troops as we refuse the entry of all other troops.
In other developments, a U.S. defense official said on Tuesday U.S. occupation forces have captured an alleged top leader suspect of the Ansar al-Islam group in the northern Iraqi city of Mosul. And Iraqi Kurdish leader Jalal Talabani of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, who is also a member of Iraq's Transitional Authority, met with Iranian President Mohammad Khatami in Tehran. Talabani said that Americans would be asked to leave Iraq after a legitimate government and legislation is established. However, he did not specify whether he was referring to U.S. troops or the U.S. civilian administrators. Talabani said that the Iraqi people is solely capable to provide security in the country and accused remnants of the former regime of causing a state of instability. As U.S. President George W. Bush prepares to leave Washington Wednesday for a tour through Asia and Australia, his National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice said on Tuesday that his trip would stress the importance of long-standing alliances in the region. The trip comes at a time when a new UN resolution aimed at getting more nations to share the growing burden in Iraq is facing an uncertain future, and Rice said Bush would not make specific requests for cash or soldiers. Bush, however, will undoubtedly remind people that we have a donor conference coming up and that we would hope people would be generous, Rice said, referring to a planned meeting in Madrid later this month. Muslim leaders arrived in the Malaysian city of Putrajaya for an Organization of Islamic Conference meeting on Thursday and Friday. The 57-nation OIC have devoted a day before regular summit talks to discuss how the Islamic world could catch with the West, which currently dominates the world economy. Issues that are expected to dominate the Organization of Islamic Conference Summit are Iraq, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, in addition to Israel's recent aggression against Syria. Terrorism and regional stability are also likely to play a major part in discussions.
On the eve of an OIC summit in Malaysia, the President of Iraq's U.S.-backed Provisional Governing Council said elections would take place in his country next year. Speaking one day before the opening of the summit of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, Iyad Alawi added that setting a timetable for U.S.-led troops to withdraw was an issue for Iraqis to decide alone.
We, the Iraqis, would reject any proposal which is to be imposed on us. This is not acceptable to us. We advise the Russians and the French, if they want to propose anything related to Iraq, they should discuss it with the Iraqi authorities. And we are the Iraqi authorities, and they have to discuss it with us. Otherwise, really, it wouldn't be acceptable. They would be settling their scores and their problems outside the discussions with the Iraqis.
Minutes earlier, Alawi told the news conference that occupying forces were needed in Iraq to ensure peace and stability and protect the country's borders. He said those forces should be given a UN mandate and be put under the command of the United States as Washington has demanded. Alawi said the current US-led coalition should be the leading force in any peacekeeping mission. Iraqi officials also reiterated the Council's opposition to troops from neighboring countries.
We do not we do not prefer forces and troops from neighboring countries to enter Iraq because we want good neighborly relations between the people of Iraq and the peoples of our neighboring countries.
The head of NASA on Wednesday hailed China's first manned space launch and wished China a safe space program. The NASA administrator said in a statement that this launch is an important achievement in the history of human exploration. China is only the third nation after Russia and the United States to successfully launch humans into space. More about the manned space launch in the following report.
4 decades after the Soviet Union and the United States, China became the third country in history to put a man in orbit. The astronaut is a 38-year-old lieutenant colonel in China's Air Force named Yang Liwei. The Chenzhou 5 craft cut across a bright azure northwest China sky at exactly 0100 GMT. 28 minutes after announcing the liftoff, state television showed the spaceship streaking into the sky and disappearing. Chinese media reported that it took 10 minutes for the ship to achieve Earth orbit. China had kept details of the event secret, saying in advance only that the launch would take place between Wednesday and Friday and that the astronaut would orbit the Earth 14 times. It was the culmination of a decade of efforts by China's military-linked manned space program and a patriotism-drenched moment for a communist government more concerned than ever about its profile on the world stage. Russia, which sent the first man into space more than 40 years ago, led congratulations on Wednesday on China's first manned space mission. In the United States, analysts said that China's military-linked space program did have national security meaning for the U.S. administration. European officials predicted the Chinese move would open a new era of cooperation. The European Space Agency, ESA Director General Jean-Jacques Dordain hailed it as an outstanding achievement, demonstrating the reliability of China's aerospace technology. European experts also suggested that China's manned orbital flight could help it muscle its way aboard the financially troubled International Space Station.
NATO inaugurated on Wednesday a 9,000-strong rapid response force designed to dramatically extend the military alliance's reach In a ceremony at NATO's Northern European Command headquarters, U.S. General James Jones, the alliance's top military chief, handed over the colors of the new force to his first commander, British General Jack Deverell. Jones said that with the NATO Response Force, NRF, the alliance will, for the first time, have a combined air, land and sea and special operations force under a single commander. The force, which is designed to deploy to hotspots around the globe within 5 days, will eventually total 21,000 troops when it reaches full capacity in 2006. The contingent represents a radical departure for the 54-year-old alliance from its roots as the West's protector from the Soviet threat. It also comes only 2 months after NATO began its first ever mission beyond Europe by taking command of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan.
The German Der Spiegel magazine quoted Israeli security sources saying that Israel is ready to launch a preemptive strike against the Iranian nuclear facilities to prevent Tehran from manufacturing nuclear weapons since it has reached an advanced stage. The same sources informed the German magazine that Israel has been monitoring 6 nuclear facilities in Iran, and they suspect that the Iranians have the ability to produce enriched uranium.
In his weekly address, the American President George Bush said that the United States has a clear strategy to help the Iraqi people build a stable and secure country. In the meantime, attacks on the American soldiers in Iraq continued as U.S. soldiers chased Saddam Hussein's supporters. Our reporter, Anat Bekar, provided us with more details.
In the city of Tikrit, the American forces arrested 4 people suspected of supporting aggressive activities against the coalition forces in Iraq. The U.S. soldiers launched an attack on several homes north of the city in the early hours of the morning. In addition, about 150 American soldiers launched an attack against training camps for Saddam Hussein's Fidaiyin in Baku, arresting 10 people and confiscating weapons and ammunition. Furthermore, 1 Iraqi police officer was killed and 6 others were wounded when they were attacked with hand grenades in the city of Karbala in southern Baghdad. Meanwhile, the Iraqi central bank announced that the old money, which had Saddam Hussein's picture on it, has been burnt, and that the new money will begin circulating on Wednesday. An American military unit stationed in Iraq decided to teach football to Iraqi orphans, to form good relations with them and take a rest from the daily violence. U.S. soldiers expressed their desire to form a joint American and Iraqi team to build friendly relations in the future.
Leader of the Islamic Revolution Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says efforts to serve members of the public amount to the most valuable act of worship. The leader made the comments at a meeting with a host of provincial elite, officials and executive on day 3 of a visit to Zanjan. Ayatollah Khamenei said in its society the elite guarantee the sustainability of social values, improve the conditions on the ground and secure better prospects for the future. The leader urged officials to make optimal use of the talents of the elite who specialize in all areas, namely science, culture, sports, arts, industry, and agriculture. Ayatollah Khamenei held the solidarity on the ground among members of the public and said unity among state officials, as far as Islamic and revolutionary values and principles are concerned, is of great substance. The leader stated the enemy is at pains to drive a wedge among officials and deal a heavy blow to the state management in Iran. However, their efforts have failed as far as top layers of the establishment are involved. Mid-ranking officials should exercise maximum vigilance and stay away from divisive issues, not to allow the propaganda machine of Zionist and hegemonic powers to paint an overblown picture of certain questions to pursue their unholy objectives against the Islamic establishment. The leader later visited the city's cemetery, where martyrs of the revolution and sacred defense are laid to rest, and honored their memory. And over $60 million in finances will be earmarked for development projects in Zanjan province in the next 30 months. Ayatollah Khamenei was on hand at a meeting earlier on Wednesday to discuss ways of implementing the development plans across the province. The meeting also decided to carry out 33 agricultural and water-related projects in the 2.5 years to come. The leader told participants, among them a number of ministers and directors of state organizations, giving priority to important projects along with appropriate management and interorganizational cooperation will be instrumental in proper implementations of the project. And later, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces told a military procession the Iranian armed forces are defenders of morality and human values who kept the flag of hope hoisted in the hearts of Iranians during 8 years of sacred defense. As for the foreign propaganda blitz aimed at Iran's nuclear technology, the leader said global powers accused Tehran of making efforts to use the technology for military purposes, whereas warmongers are those who waged 2 world wars in the 2 decades in the first half of the 20th century, and today are fanning the flames of wars and conflict in the farthest reaches of the world and kill the innocent to secure more profit from the trade in arms. At the end of meeting, the men in uniform took to the parade ground to be inspected by Ayatollah Khamenei.
Iran Aziz, Iran Quran, Iran Amir al-Mu'minin.
And 3 delegations traveled to different provincial cities on behalf of the leader during the visit. Ayatollah Khamenei wrapped up his provincial tour and returned to Tehran earlier tonight. Iranian President Mohammad Khatami left Tehran late Wednesday to attend the 10th summit of the Organization of the Islamic Conference due to kick off in Putrajaya, Malaysia on Thursday. In a pre-departure interview in Tehran's Mehrabad airport, the president said the meeting will be mainly geared to work out substantial changes in the OIC mechanisms or to secure a more active role for the top Islamic body and materialize its objectives. Heads of state and high-ranking officials from 57 OIC member states will take part in the 2-day session where UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, Russian and Filipino Presidents Vladimir Putin and Gloria Arroyo will be on hand as observers. Iranian President is scheduled to meet with over 15 ranking officials at the sidelines of the OIC session. In a memorandum of understanding inked between Tehran and Kiev on Wednesday, both sides stressed the need for bolstering of interparliamentary cooperation, calling for deepening bilateral ties in social, scientific, cultural, and economic domains. Heading a high-ranking parliamentary delegation, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mehdi Karoubi arrived in Kiev on Wednesday when he was warmly welcomed by the head of Supreme Council of Ukraine. Iranian top parliamentarian is due to hold key talks with top Ukrainian officials in his 3-day visit to Kiev.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities. And the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.